Rain dragged slow, deliberate lines down the tall windows of the Lambert estate, blurring the lights of Milan into something distant and unreachable. From the outside, the mansion looked exactly as it always had, immovable, powerful, eternal. But inside, something old and carefully buried was being unearthed. Kira Lambert stood barefoot on the cold marble floor of her father's study, her toes curling slightly against the chill. She hadn't bothered with shoes. Somehow, grounding herself to the stone felt necessary, like she might drift apart if she didn't hold on to something solid. Thunder rolled over the hills beyond the estate, deep and resonant, rattling the glass just enough to make the chandeliers tremble. The storm had come without warning. In Kira's world, storms rarely did. "You need to pay attention," her father said from behind his desk. His voice was even, controlled, stripped of anything that might betray emotion. "This concerns you." Kira didn't turn immediately. She remained at the window, watching rain distort the city she had grown up in, Milan, beautiful and suffocating, a place that had given her everything except freedom. Her reflection stared back at her faintly in the glass, dark hair loose around her shoulders, a silk robe pulled tight around her waist, eyes too sharp for someone her age. "I'm listening," she said quietly. Her father, Alessandro Lambert, regarded her from across the room. Time had etched authority into every line of his face. He was a man who had never needed to raise his voice to be obeyed. The Lambert name did the work for him, had done so for generations. "Our contacts in the south confirmed it this afternoon," he said. "The docks, the shipping routes, the distribution networks, they've all consolidated." Kira's fingers stilled against the window. "Under one man," Alessandro continued. He paused, deliberately. "He's back." The word echoed in the room. Kira closed her eyes. She didn't ask who. Dominic Perez. The name slid through her chest, like a blade she recognized too well. The boy who once kissed her behind the vineyard walls when they were too young to understand consequences. The boy who traced promises into her palm and swore he would never leave her. The boy who disappeared 6 years ago without a word, leaving nothing behind but silence and unanswered questions. Her first love. Except first loves weren't supposed to come back like this. "He's not just back," her father said, watching her carefully now. "He's risen. Dominic Perez controls territory men kill for. He runs ports that governments pretend not to see. He commands loyalty you can't buy." Kira finally turned. "The boy who used to blush when I caught him staring at me?" she asked softly. Alessandro didn't smile. "That boy is gone." Something inside her tightened. "Dominic Perez is one of the most feared Mafia leaders in Italy," her father went on. "And he didn't return for nostalgia." The words settled heavy between them. Kira swallowed. "Then why did he return?" Her father's gaze didn't waver. "Because he asked for you." The thunder cracked so violently the windows shuddered in their frames. "For me," Kira repeated, more to herself than to him. "Yes," Alessandro said. "Tonight. He requested to see you privately." Her pulse thudded loud enough that she wondered if her father could hear it. "No guards?" she asked. "He was very clear," her father replied. "Alone." Kira let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "Of course he was." She crossed the room slowly, every step deliberate, measured movements drilled into her since childhood. In this world, hesitation was weakness. Emotion was currency others spent against you. "And what happens if I refuse?" she asked. Alessandro's jaw tightened just enough to be noticeable. "You won't," he said. Kira stopped in front of his desk. "You don't get to decide that." Her father rose to his feet, tall and imposing even now. "This isn't about choice, it's about reality." She searched his face for something, anything that resembled concern. She found calculation instead. "Dominic Perez didn't survive 6 years in exile by accident," Alessandro continued. "Men like him don't return empty-handed. They return to collect." A chill crept up her spine. "You're saying he's here for payment," she said. "I'm saying," her father replied carefully, "that whatever you and Dominic shared as children was never just a memory. In our world, attachments are leverage, and Dominic has always been particular about what he considers his." Anger flared hot and sudden in her chest. "I am not something he owns." Alessandro stepped closer. Then you should remember what kind of world raised him. The storm raged on outside, relentless now. Kira turned away again, pressing her palms flat against the window as if she could push the past back into the night. Memories surfaced unbidden: the chapel with its cracked stone floors, candlelight trembling against ancient walls, Dominick's voice low and reverent when he said her name, like it was a secret meant only for him. "I'll come back for you." She had believed him. "When?" she asked quietly. "An hour," her father said. "The old chapel on the Perez estate." Her breath caught. Of course. Dominick had always loved symbolism. Even as a boy, he understood the power of moments, of places that carried weight. The chapel wasn't just a location, it was a reminder. Of promises, of things left unfinished. Alessandro watched her closely. "You need to be careful, Kira. The man you're about to face is not the one you loved." She turned back to him, lifting her chin. "Neither am I." Something like approval flickered briefly in his eyes. "Good," he said. "Because Dominick Perez doesn't come back asking. He comes back expecting." When he left the study, the silence felt louder than the thunder. Kira remained where she was long after the door closed, staring at her reflection in the darkened glass. 24 years old, raised in a world that demanded strength before innocence had a chance to survive. She had spent 6 years convincing herself that Dominick was a chapter that had ended, that first love was meant to hurt and fade. She had been wrong. The storm outside intensified as she dressed, choosing a deep burgundy dress that clung to her like a second skin. The color of wine, of blood, of things that stained and never truly washed away. She left her hair loose, dark waves falling freely down her back, and kept her makeup minimal. Armor didn't always have to be obvious. The drive through Milan was quiet. Rain-slicked streets reflecting neon lights like fractured memories. With every mile, her heartbeat grew steadier, colder. Fear had burned itself out, leaving something sharper in its place. Resolve. The Perez estate loomed ahead, all stone and shadow, iron gates opening silently as her car approached. It felt smaller than she remembered, or perhaps she had simply grown. The chapel stood at the far edge of the property, its silhouette stark against the stormy sky. Light glowed faintly through the stained glass windows. He was already there. Kira paused at the threshold, her hand hovering over the heavy wooden door. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to remember the boy he had been, the warmth of his hands, the way his voice softened when he spoke only to her. Then she pushed the door open. The chapel smelled the same. Old stone, melted wax, forgotten promises. Dominick Perez stood near the altar, his back to her, tall and impossibly still. He wore black, the fabric of his tailored suit outlining a body built for violence and control. Even without seeing his face, she could feel the weight of him, like the room itself had bent around his presence. "Kira," he said without turning. Her name in his voice was still devastating. And just like that, the past stepped out of the shadows. The door closed behind Kira with a muted thud that echoed through the chapel like a verdict. Dominick Perez stood near the altar, his back still to her, shoulders broad beneath the clean lines of his suit. Candlelight caught the sharp angles of his frame, turning him into something carved rather than born. The stained glass above him fractured saints and fading colors threw shadows across his skin, and for a breathless second she wondered if the chapel remembered them too. "Kira," he said again, softer this time. She didn't answer. She let her gaze travel instead over the length of him, the way power had settled into his posture like a second spine. He had grown taller, she thought, or maybe he simply carried himself as if space were something he owned now. His hair was darker, cropped with intent. The boyish softness she once traced with her fingers had been honed into something lethal. When he turned, the world narrowed. His eyes were the same impossible black she remembered, bottomless, reflective, dangerous but colder now, as if a winter had moved in and refused to leave. He took a step toward her, then stopped, as though measuring the distance not in feet but in years. "You came," he said. "You summoned," she replied. "There's a difference." A corner of his mouth lifted. Not a smile. An assessment. "You haven't changed as much as I expected." Kira folded her arms, the silk of her dress whispering. You vanished for 6 years without a word. I wasn't exactly waiting for your opinion. Something flickered in his eyes too quick to catch, gone before it could soften him. He moved closer, his footsteps soundless on stone. You're angry, he said. I'm furious, she corrected. And you don't get to name my emotions like they belong to you. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could smell him cedar and leather, something metallic beneath, like rain on steel, the scent of danger, of control. I didn't come here to argue, he said. You came to what then? She asked. Remind me how easily you left. Silence stretched between them, taut as wire. Candle flames trembled, as if the chapel itself were holding its breath. I left, Dominic said at last, because staying would have killed you. Kira laughed once, sharp and brittle. That's convenient. His jaw tightened. It's the truth. Then explain it, she demanded. Explain how disappearing no note, no warning was supposed to save me. He took another step, slow, deliberate. She didn't move back. Pride anchored her feet to the floor. Men were watching me, he said. Not the ones you see, the ones who don't need to announce themselves. They learned what you were to me. Her throat went dry. They would have taken you, he continued, voice low, controlled. Used you to break me. To make a point. So you decided the best solution was to become a monster, she said. His gaze sharpened. I decided to become untouchable. And what about me? She asked. What was I supposed to become while you were busy building an empire out of fear? He hesitated. Just a fraction. Safe, he said. The word landed between them like a fragile thing. Kira shook her head. You don't get to define safety for me. You don't get to decide what I can survive. You were 16, he snapped, a crack in the calm. You would have tried to stop me. Or waited. Either would have destroyed you. Her chest tightened. So you chose to destroy me yourself. His eyes darkened. He reached out, then stopped, his hand hovering inches from her face, fingers flexing as if resisting an instinct. I watched you, he said quietly. All these years. Her breath caught. That's not the comfort you think it is. I needed to know you were alive, he said. That no one touched what was mine. There it is, she said. Ownership. He didn't deny it. Call it what you want. The space between them felt charged now, thick with unspoken things. Desire stirred, unwanted and undeniable, coiling low in her stomach. She hated herself for it. Hated that her body remembered what her mind refused to forgive. You look at me like you're waiting for permission, she said. His gaze dropped slow, deliberate over her shoulders, the curve of her waist, the line of her throat. When his eyes returned to hers, they were darker. I don't ask, he said. Her pulse jumped. I know. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Candle wax dripped softly. Rain tapped at the stained glass like impatient fingers. You should leave, Kira said, though every part of her resisted the idea. Say you don't want me here, he replied, and I will. She opened her mouth and closed it again. The truth sat heavy on her tongue. She didn't want him here. And she wanted him everywhere. The contradiction hurt more than his absence ever had. I want answers, she said instead. You'll have them, he promised. All of them. Before she could respond, the chapel door creaked open. He felt it before she saw it, the shift in Dominic's posture, the subtle tightening of his shoulders. Kira turned. The woman who entered wore red like a declaration. Viviana moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to being seen, her heels clicking softly against stone. Dark hair fell in glossy waves down her back, and her smile was sharp enough to cut. So, this is her, Viviana said, her gaze sliding over Kira with open appraisal. The ghost I keep hearing about. Dominic's expression hardened. You weren't invited. Viviana's smile widened. I don't need an invitation to see my own past. Kira straightened, meeting her gaze. And you are? Viviana's eyes flicked to Dominic, then back. Someone who knows him very well. Viviana, Dominic warned. She ignored him, stepping closer to Kira, close enough to invade her space. He never told you about me, did he? Kira didn't look away. He doesn't need to. Viviana laughed softly. Protective, I wondered. Dominic moved between them then, a wall of muscle and intent. Enough. Viviana's gaze softened as it found him, something possessive and wounded flickering beneath the surface. You promised me, she said quietly. I promised you nothing, he replied. The tension snapped tight. Kira felt it, then felt how the air shifted, how the chapel seemed to lean toward the three of them, waiting. Whatever this was, whatever Viviana represented, it wasn't over. It was only just stepping into the light. And the past, hers and Dominic's, was no longer theirs alone. The chapel didn't feel sacred anymore. It felt crowded. Viviana lingered near the entrance as if she belonged there, her red dress a deliberate wound against the chapel's muted stone. She didn't rush. She didn't apologize. She took in the space and Kira with the ease of someone who had already decided how this story should end. Dominic stood between them, his presence a barrier, his jaw set hard. You should leave, he said again, this time colder. Viviana's smile softened into something almost fond. You always say that when you don't want to deal with consequences. Kira watched them, really watched. The way Viviana tilted her head toward him, the familiarity in her eyes, the confidence that didn't come from imagination but from memory, from history. So, Kira said quietly, breaking the silence. This is what 6 years looks like. Viviana's gaze snapped to her. 6 years changes people. Apparently, Kira replied. Dominic turned slightly, as if to shield Kira without touching her. The gesture did nothing to calm the heat rising in her chest. Viviana, he said, this isn't the time. Viviana laughed softly. There's never a convenient time to meet the woman who came before you. Kira felt the words like a slap. After, she corrected. I came before. Viviana studied her with new interest. Did you? The challenge was clear. Kira took a slow breath. She refused to be baited, not here, not now. Why are you here? She asked. Viviana's gaze slid back to Dominic. I came because he disappeared again, and I don't appreciate being dismissed. Dominic's expression didn't change. You were told to wait. I waited, Viviana said. Longer than I should have. Something sharp lodged itself beneath Kira's ribs. How long? She asked, unable to stop herself. Viviana's lips curved. Long enough to think I mattered. Dominic exhaled through his nose, controlled, restrained. You knew what this was. Viviana's eyes darkened. I knew what you allowed it to be. The tension thickened, pressing in from all sides. Kira felt suddenly like an intruder in her own past. You should go, Dominic said, his voice final. Viviana stepped closer instead. You don't get to erase me just because she's standing here. Kira's patience snapped. Erase you from what, exactly? Viviana turned fully toward her then, eyes bright with something dangerous. From his life. The words echoed. Kira swallowed. You were in his life. Yes, Viviana said. I was. The admission landed hard. Dominic's gaze flicked to Kira, searching, measuring. It wasn't serious. Viviana laughed again, this time without humor. Funny. You didn't say that when you were in my bed. Kira's fingers curled into fists at her sides. The chapel seemed to tilt, the air growing thin. Dominic's voice sharpened. Enough. Is it? Viviana asked. Or is this the part where you pretend I never existed? Kira felt heat rise behind her eyes, not tears. Never tears, but something hotter. Rage, maybe. Or humiliation. You loved him, Viviana said, her gaze never leaving Kira. I can tell. Kira lifted her chin. And you think that makes you special? Viviana's smile faded. I think it makes us dangerous. Dominic stepped forward then, decisive. This conversation is over. Viviana looked at him for a long moment, something wounded flashing across her face before it hardened into resolve. You promised me a future. I promised you nothing, he repeated. You knew where I stood. Viviana's voice dropped. You told me I was safe. Dominic didn't answer. That silence spoke louder than any denial. Kira felt it then, the doubt creeping in, insidious and unwelcome. Dominic had always been careful with words. He knew their weight. If Viviana believed she'd been promised something, it wasn't born from nothing. Did you tell her she was safe? Kira asked quietly. Dominic's gaze met hers. I protect the people around me. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Power shifted then, subtle but unmistakable. Dominic straightened, his presence expanding, filling the chapel until it felt smaller for it. The boy who once asked her to swear forever beneath broken glass was gone. This man didn't ask. He declared. Viviana, he said. Leave. Viviana's eyes flicked between them. For a moment, something like regret surfaced. Then it vanished. This isn't finished, she said to Kira. He doesn't replace people. He uses them. And when he's done, Dominic's voice cut through hers, low and lethal. Go. Viviana held his gaze for a beat longer, then turned on her heel and walked out, her heels echoing against stone like gunshot. The door closed behind her with a finality that made Kira flinch. Silence rushed back in. Kira didn't look at Dominic immediately. She stared at the altar instead, the place where promises had once felt unbreakable. She thinks you promised her more, Kira said. She's wrong. You say that very easily. Dominic moved closer. Because it's true. Is it? Kira asked. Or is it convenient? His eyes narrowed. Careful. There it is, she said softly. That tone. He stopped an arm's length away. You're letting her get inside your head. She didn't have to, Kira replied. She walked into a space you left open. Dominic's jaw flexed. You weren't there. You made sure of that. Silence stretched again, heavier this time. I didn't replace you, he said finally. Kira laughed. Sharp and bitter. Then what do you call it when another woman knows the way you take your coffee? When she knows how you touch her? When she thinks she has a claim? I survived, he said. I did what I had to do. And what about me? She demanded. What was I doing while you were surviving? He didn't answer. That hurt more than any lie. You came back different, Kira said. Colder. Harder. I came back alive. She shook her head. That's not the same thing. His gaze softened just barely. You think I wanted this? You chose it. I chose you, he snapped. Everything I became was to keep you breathing. Then why does it feel like I'm suffocating? She asked. Dominic reached out then, his fingers brushing her wrist. The touch sent a shock through her, familiar and foreign all at once. Because you're standing too close to the fire, he said. She pulled her hand back. No. Because you won't let me see the truth. His eyes darkened. You wouldn't like it. Try me. The tension coiled tighter, sharper. Outside, the storm intensified, rain hammering the stained glass like a warning. You want to know who I am now? Dominic asked. Yes, Kira said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. I want to see who you really are. His gaze held hers, unreadable. Then be careful what you ask for, he said. Kira didn't flinch. Show me. And in that moment, she understood whatever Dominic Perez had become. It wasn't something she could unsee. They didn't speak on the drive. Rain slicked the streets into mirrors that reflected a city Kira barely recognized anymore. Milan slid past the windows in fractured lights and shadowed alleys, its elegance stripped bare by the hour. Dominic sat beside her in the back seat, silent, immovable, his presence filling the space without effort. The driver didn't look back. No one asked questions. Kira watched Dominic's hands instead. They rested loosely on his knees, steady, controlled. Hands that had once trembled when they held hers beneath chapel candles. Hands that now belonged to a man who didn't shake. You don't have to do this, she said finally. Dominic didn't turn. You asked. I asked for truth, she replied. Not this. This is the truth. The car turned off the main road, and into a stretch of industrial sprawl warehouses crouched low and silent, their windows dark, their walls tagged and forgotten. The city's pulse felt distant here, replaced by something older and colder. The car stopped. "Stay close," Dominic said, opening his door. "And don't speak unless I tell you to." The command bristled, but Kira followed him out into the rain-soaked night. The air smelled of oil and wet concrete. Somewhere, a generator hummed. Men moved in shadows, Dominic's men, she realized, faces half-hidden, eyes alert. They nodded as he passed. None looked at her. The warehouse door rolled open with a metallic groan. Inside, the space was cavernous and bright under harsh lights. The floor gleamed with moisture, reflecting everything back too clearly. 4 men knelt near the center, hands bound behind their backs, faces bruised and bloodied. One sobbed quietly. Another stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, defiant even now. Kira stopped. Her stomach dropped, cold and hollow. Dominic didn't slow. He guided her to the edge of the scene with a hand at her back, firm, not unkind. "Stand here," he said. "You'll see." She wanted to run. The instinct roared through her, sharp and primal, but she stayed. Pride and something darker held her in place. "Why am I here?" she asked, her voice thinner than she intended. "Because you wanted to know who I am," he replied, "and because lies would be easier." One of the men looked up then, eyes wild. "Please," he rasped. "We can make this right." Dominic stepped forward, unhurried. "You already did." He took a gun from the man behind him, checked it with practiced ease, and faced the kneeling men. Kira's breath came shallow, her ears rang. She focused on Dominic's profile, the set of his jaw, the absence of doubt. "You stole from me," Dominic said, voice calm, almost conversational. "You broke an agreement, and you thought distance would save you." The defiant man spat. "We had no choice." "You always have a choice," Dominic replied. "You chose wrong." He raised the gun. The sound was deafening. Kira flinched as the first man collapsed forward, his body hitting the concrete with a wet, final thud. Blood spread quickly, dark and glossy, pooling at Dominic's feet. Her heart slammed against her ribs, her vision tunneled. She tasted metal. The second shot came faster. Then the third. Dominic didn't hesitate. He didn't look away. Each movement was precise, economical, devastating. By the time the fourth body fell, the warehouse was silent, except for the hum of the lights and the distant rain. Kira realized she was shaking. She pressed her fingers into her palms until her nails bit skin. "Don't scream, don't cry, don't give anyone the satisfaction of seeing you break." Dominic lowered the gun and handed it back without comment. He turned to her then, not with triumph, not with regret, but with intent. "Look at me," he said. She did, slowly. His eyes searched her face, reading every crack in her composure. He didn't reach for her. He didn't apologize. He waited. "You killed them," she whispered. "Yes. No trial, no mercy. They didn't deserve either." Her chest tightened. "You didn't even pause." "I can't afford to." She swallowed hard. Does it ever bother you?" Something like impatience crossed his face. "Bother me?" "Yes," she said, her voice breaking despite herself. "Taking lives, ending them like this." Dominic considered her for a moment. "It's not about life," he said. "It's about control." She recoiled. "That's not better." "It's honest." Kira turned away, nausea surging. The concrete gleamed beneath the lights, stained now, irrevocably changed, just like him, just like her, she realized. "You brought me here to scare me," she said. "No," Dominic replied. "I brought you here so you'd understand." She laughed once, hollow. "Understand what?" "That every man who threatens what's mine dies," he said simply. "And that includes men who think they can touch you." Her breath caught. "You think this is protection?" she asked. "It is. This is slaughter. This is prevention." The words clashed, brutal and irreconcilable. Kira closed her eyes, images flashing behind her lids, blood, gunfire, Dominic's steady hands. "You could have told me," she said. You could have explained instead of this. Would you have believed me? He asked. She didn't answer. Dominic stepped closer, lowering his voice. Fear keeps the world predictable. Power keeps it quiet. I became what I had to so no one would ever dare use you against me. Her chest burned. And what did I become in the process? His gaze softened just a fraction. Alive. She opened her eyes again, meeting his. You watched me. Yes. All these years. Yes. You let me think you'd forgotten me. I never did. The admission hit harder than the gunshots. You killed them for me, she said. I killed them because they crossed me, he corrected, but you are why crossing me is fatal. Kira pressed her hand to her mouth, fighting the urge to retch. Horror churned with something else, something insidious and terrifying. Understanding. She saw it then, with brutal clarity. Every choice he'd made, every line he'd crossed. The empire of fear he'd built wasn't random violence, it was architecture. Structure. A system designed to keep one thing untouched. Her. You turned yourself into a weapon, she whispered. Dominic nodded. Weapons don't get threatened. And what happens when the weapon turns inward? She asked. When it cuts the very thing it was meant to protect? His eyes locked on hers. That won't happen. You don't know that. I do, he said, with absolute certainty, because I'm watching myself as closely as I'm watching you. She shuddered. The rain intensified, drumming against the metal roof. Somewhere, a door slammed. The men began to move, clearing the scene with efficient silence. Take her home, Dominic said to the driver. Kira didn't move. No. He turned back to her. Kira. I need. She stopped, steadying herself. I need to understand something. Ask. She met his gaze, heart pounding. If loving me made you this, what does being with me make you? For the first time since she'd arrived, Dominic hesitated. Then he stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat of him. The gravity. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. It makes me careful, he said, and that should terrify you more than anything you saw tonight. The words settled over her like a vow and a warning. As the car doors closed behind her and the warehouse receded into the rain, Kira stared out into the dark city and realized the truth she couldn't escape. Fear hadn't driven her away from Dominic Perez. It had bound her closer. An understanding terrifying, intimate understanding was a far stronger chain. Kira didn't sleep. The warehouse clung to her blood on concrete, the echo of gunfire, the way Dominic's voice never wavered. Dawn crept into her room in pale strips of gray, but it brought no relief. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his hands. Steady. Certain. Unapologetic. By mid-morning, a message arrived. Come to the garden. Alone. No signature. None was needed. The Perez estate was quiet when she arrived. The storm spent. The air clean in the way it always was after violence had passed through and left its mark somewhere else. The garden stretched wide and manicured, roses heavy with rain. Dominic stood near the fountain, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He looked less like a king here and more like a man who had been awake all night, wrestling ghosts. You shouldn't be here, she said. You shouldn't be alone, he replied. Yet here we are. She stopped a few feet from him. You brought me to watch you kill men. I brought you to watch me keep you alive. That's not an explanation, she said. That's a threat dressed as devotion. He turned fully then, eyes dark, tired. Then let me explain. She crossed her arms, bracing herself. I'm listening. Dominic took a breath. It looked like it hurt. They knew about you before I left, he said. Not your name at first. Just a weakness. A girl who made me careless. Her chest tightened. Who? Everyone, he said simply. Rivals. Partners. Men who smiled to my father's face and sharpened knives behind his back. She waited, heart hammering. They planned to take you, he continued. Not to ransom you. To make me watch. To prove that power could still bleed. Kira felt the world tilt. You're saying... I intercepted the message, he said. Too late to pretend it wasn't real. Too early to fight it openly without making you a target. Her voice shook. So you ran? I disappeared, he corrected. There's a difference. She laughed. Brittle. Tell that to the girl you left behind. His jaw tightened. If I had stayed, they would have come faster. If I had warned you, you would have tried to stand with me, and then they would have won. So you decided for me, she said. Again. I decided to be the villain, he replied, because villains survive. Silence pressed in. A bird startled from a hedge. Water trickled from the fountain. Steady and indifferent. You could have told me later, she said. After, you could have come back. I did, he said softly. When it was safe. Her eyes burned. 6 years later. I needed them to believe I had no weakness, he said. I needed fear to replace love. She shook her head. And in the process, you broke me. He stepped closer. I watched you break, he said, voice low. Every time you smiled when you shouldn't have. Every time you walked into a room alone. Her breath hitched. You said you watched me. Yes. How? She demanded. He didn't hesitate. I had eyes on you. Men, cameras, names. Her skin prickled. You spied on me. I protected you. You controlled me. I guarded you, he insisted. From men who didn't understand boundaries. From offers meant to trap you. From marriages that would have put you in danger. Her anger flared hot and sharp. You don't get to curate my life from the shadows. I do if it keeps you breathing, he said. She stared at him, trembling. You never trusted me. I trusted you too much, he said. That was the problem. The words cut deep. You left me thinking I wasn't enough, she said, that loving me was easy to abandon. He reached for her, stopped himself. Loving you was the hardest thing I've ever done. Memory surged, then unbidden, vivid. The chapel, years ago. Candlelight painting his face in gold and blue. His hands shaking as he pressed the blade to his palm. Forever, she had whispered, believing it with everything she was. I remember the night you taught me to lie, she said. You told me to look calm even when my heart was breaking. He closed his eyes. I remember teaching you to shoot. She smiled sadly. You laughed when I flinched. You laughed when you hit the target, he said. You were better than you thought. They stood there, past and present colliding, the garden holding their confessions like a secret. You became obsessed, she said finally. Yes, he answered, without shame. With control. With you. Her breath caught. I didn't touch anyone the way I touched you, he said. I didn't trust anyone the way I trusted you. And when I couldn't have you, I made sure no one else did. That's not love, she whispered. It's survival, he replied, and it grew into something else. She searched his face, saw the cracks beneath the armor. What about Viviana? His expression hardened. She was a distraction. A woman who thought she mattered, Kira said. She mattered to the extent that she was near me, he said, not to the extent that she replaced you. Kira laughed softly, a sound edged with pain. You make it sound so simple. It wasn't, he said. It was empty. She stepped closer now, drawn despite herself. Did you ever think about coming back sooner? Every day, he said. Every night, especially when it rained. Her throat tightened. You know I hate storms. I know, he said. I know everything. The intimacy of it, terrifying, tender, settled between them. She saw him then, truly saw him. A man who had buried himself alive to keep her safe, who had turned love into fear because fear obeyed. I waited, she said, even when I told myself not to. His eyes darkened. Did you love anyone else? No, she said. Not like that. A breath left him, slow and careful, as if he'd been holding it for years. I still love you, she said, the words burning as they left her mouth. I hate that I do. But it's there. He took her face in his hands then, gentle as memory, thumbs warm against her cheeks. He didn't kiss her. He rested his forehead against hers. "I never stopped," he said. "I just learned how to hide it." They stayed like that, the world narrowing to breath and heat and the fragile space between them. A phone buzzed. Dominic stilled. His jaw tightened. "Viviana," Kira said. "Yes." "What now?" He pulled back, eyes sharp. "She's making noise." Kira's pulse quickened. "What kind?" "The kind that doesn't stay quiet," he said. "The kind that wants to be seen." Somewhere in the estate, a door slammed. Raised voices carried on the air. Kira felt it then, a shift, a fracture. "She's unraveling," Dominic said. And for the first time since the warehouse, fear crept back in, not for herself, but for what Viviana might do when she realized she had lost. The air at the Perez estate felt wrong. Kira noticed it the moment she stepped out of the car, too quiet, too controlled, as if the grounds themselves were holding something back. The gardens were immaculate, the guards positioned as always, but there was an edge to everything now, a tension that hummed just beneath the surface. Dominic didn't notice. Or rather, he noticed and dismissed it. "She'll calm down," he said, walking ahead of her toward the house. "Viviana thrives on attention. When she doesn't get it, she lashes out, then she disappears." Kira followed, her unease sharpening. "You sound very sure." "I am," he replied. "I've seen this before." That was what frightened her. Viviana had not struck Kira as the type to fade quietly. She carried herself like someone who had been promised a throne and then shoved aside at the last moment. That kind of humiliation didn't dissolve, it fermented. Inside, the house moved with quiet efficiency. Servants avoided Kira's gaze. Guards spoke in murmurs. Somewhere, a phone rang and was silenced too quickly. Kira slowed her steps. "Something's off." Dominic glanced back. "You're imagining it." "I'm not," she said. "You taught me better than that." His mouth curved slightly, amused. "I taught you to trust evidence." She gestured vaguely. "This is evidence." He stopped, turned fully to her. "Viviana doesn't have leverage. She has no allies, no access. She's angry, not dangerous." Kira searched his face. "That's what you said about the men in the warehouse." His eyes hardened. "Those men had power." "And desperation gives people power," Kira said. "You of all people should know that." For a moment, something flickered, consideration, perhaps. Then it vanished. "I'll have someone check on her," he said. "For your peace of mind." It wasn't reassurance. It was dismissal. Viviana stood in front of the mirror in her apartment, staring at a stranger. Her reflection looked composed, perfect, even. Dark hair smooth, lipstick immaculate, eyes sharp. But beneath the surface, something had fractured. She could feel it splintering, cutting deeper with every breath. Nothing serious. The words replayed in her head, cruel and casual. She had given Dominic years, had learned his moods, his silences, had waited when he disappeared for days, had defended him when others whispered. And all the while, she had believed, because he had let her believe that she mattered, that she was chosen. Her phone buzzed. No message, just silence. Rage surged, hot and blinding. She swept the contents of the dresser onto the floor, glass shattering, perfume spilling. The scent was sickeningly sweet. She laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "You don't get to erase me," she whispered to the empty room. Her gaze landed on her phone again, on the contacts she hadn't used in years. Men who owed her favors. Men who hated Dominic Perez. Ideas took shape, sharp and dangerous. Kira felt it that night. The unease that crawled beneath her skin refused to let her sleep. She lay awake in the guest room at the Perez estate, listening to the distant rhythm of guards' footsteps, the whisper of wind through old trees. She rose quietly, crossing to the window. Lights dotted the grounds like watchful eyes. Beyond them, the world waited, dark, unpredictable. Her phone vibrated. Unknown number. "You think he chose you." Her heart slammed. Another message followed before she could respond. "Ask him what he promised me." Kira's fingers trembled as she typed. "Kira, this isn't going to end the way you think." The reply came instantly. "It will end with the truth." Kira stared at the screen, dread pooling low in her stomach. She didn't tell Dominic. Not yet. Part of her wanted proof. Part of her wanted to see if he would finally take her fear seriously. That was a mistake. Dominic underestimated silence. He had built his empire on noise, gunfire, whispers, threats. Silence, he believed, meant compliance. Viviana's lack of response registered as retreat, not recalibration. She's gone quiet, his lieutenant reported the next morning. Packed up, left the city. Dominic nodded. Good. Kira didn't relax, or she's hiding. Dominic smiled faintly. From me? She didn't answer. That afternoon, the estate received a delivery unmarked, unexpected, a single envelope addressed to Kira. Dominic intercepted it first. Kira, he said, holding it up. We don't accept unscreened. It's for me, she insisted. He hesitated, then handed it over. Inside was a photograph. Kira's breath caught. It was her. Leaving her father's estate 2 nights earlier. Another entering the Perez garden. Another standing in the warehouse doorway. Her face pale under harsh lights. Surveillance. Dominic went still. This is impossible. Kira looked up at him. You said she had no access. His jaw tightened. She didn't. A note slipped from the envelope. You aren't the only one who watches. The room seemed to shrink. She's been following me, Kira whispered. Dominic's expression darkened, something lethal, flickering beneath the surface. I'll handle it. No, Kira said sharply. You'll listen. He turned to her, surprised. She knows things, Kira continued. She's been planning. And you didn't see it because you didn't want to. Dominic opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time, doubt crept into his certainty. Viviana made her move at dusk. The Lambert estate was quieter than usual, the guards rotating shifts, the routine predictable. Viviana watched from across the street, her pulse steady, her resolve ironclad. She wasn't here for Dominic. She was here for leverage. Her phone buzzed as she stepped out of the car. Unknown number. Don't do this. She smiled. Too late. Inside the estate, a scream shattered the evening calm. Kira felt it before she heard it, the wrongness, the sudden spike of terror that snapped through her like electricity. She was already moving when the alarm sounded, heart pounding, breath shallow. Dominic's voice thundered through the halls. Lock it down. Gunfire echoed in the distance. Kira's phone vibrated again. Unknown number, now he'll understand. The message was followed by a single image. Kira's father, bound, bleeding, alive for now. Her knees buckled. Dominic caught her just in time, his grip iron. This ends tonight, he said, his voice deadly calm. And somewhere in the dark, Viviana smiled because she had finally been seen. The Lambert estate burned with noise. Alarms wailed through the halls, sharp and unrelenting, slicing through the evening like sirens of judgment. Guards shouted orders, boots thundered on marble, doors slammed and locked in rapid succession. The calm power that had defined the estate for decades shattered into chaos in seconds. Kira stood frozen in the center of it all, her phone still glowing in her hand. Her father's face stared back at her from the screen, blood at his temple, wrists bound, eyes fierce even in captivity. He was alive. That was the cruelty of it. Viviana wanted them to know there was still time to choose wrong. Dominic's grip tightened around Kira's shoulders, grounding her before her legs could give way. Where? He demanded. Already moving, already calculating. Kira swallowed hard. She didn't say. She will, he replied, voice lethal in its calm. Lock the estate, no one in or out. Men scattered at his command. Kira turned to him then, her fear sharpening into something harder. She didn't do this for you. Dominic paused. Everything she does is for me. No, Kira said. She did this for power, for leverage. And I'm the leverage. His eyes snapped to hers. Absolutely not. She wants me, Kira continued, forcing her voice steady. That's why she took my family. If she wanted blood, she would have killed him already. Dominic shook his head. You're not walking into this. I already am, she said quietly. A phone rang. Every sound in the room seemed to vanish as Dominic answered it, putting it on speaker. Viviana's voice filled the space, smooth, pleased, vibrating with triumph. "Hello, Dominic." His jaw tightened. "Release them." She laughed softly. "Still giving orders? How nostalgic." Kira stepped closer to the phone. "Viviana." There was a pause. A breath. "Kira," Viviana said, "I was hoping you'd be there." "What do you want?" Kira asked. "You," Viviana replied without hesitation. "Come alone. No guards. No tricks." Dominic cut in. "If you touch her, you'll burn the city," Viviana finished. "Yes, I know. That's why you won't." Silence stretched, thick and dangerous. "You have 1 hour," Viviana continued. "After that, I start removing pieces, slowly." The line went dead. Kira didn't wait. "I'm going," she said. Dominic rounded on her. "No." "You heard her." "I heard a desperate woman trying to control a situation she can't survive," he snapped. "I will tear her apart. And my family will die in the process," Kira shot back. "She wants me alive. You know that." His hands fisted at his sides. "I won't trade you." "You don't get to decide that anymore," Kira said, stepping closer, meeting his gaze without flinching. "This is my family." Dominic stared at her like she'd struck him. "You taught me how power works," Kira continued. "You taught me that fear makes people predictable. Viviana thinks she has power because she has hostages. But she's predictable. She's unstable," Dominic said. "That makes her dangerous." "So am I," Kira replied. The words landed with weight. Dominic searched her face, saw the resolve there, the steel beneath the fear. For the first time since this began, he hesitated not because he doubted her, but because he recognized her. "You won't go alone," he said at last. Kira nodded once. "We go together." He shook his head. "If she sees me?" "She'll know she has your attention," Kira said. "That's what she wants. And she'll know I'm not running." Dominic exhaled slowly, the sound tight with restraint. He turned to his men. "Full perimeter teams. Silent. No engagement unless I give the order." "Yes, boss." Kira placed her hand on Dominic's arm. "You trust me." It wasn't a question. He looked down at her hand, then back into her eyes. "I trust you with my life. Then trust me with this." The drive was quiet, but coiled with tension. Night had fully claimed the city now, streets slick and shining under streetlights. Dominic sat beside her, a weapon resting casually in his hand, his gaze fixed ahead. Kira watched his reflection in the window, saw the monster the world feared and the man who had once sworn forever in candlelight. "You're afraid," he said softly. "Yes," she replied. "But I'm not powerless." A faint smile touched his mouth. "That might be the most dangerous thing about you." They arrived at an abandoned estate on the edge of the city, iron gates hanging crooked, lights blazing inside like an invitation and a warning. Dominic cut the engine. "This is where it changes," he said. Kira reached for his hand. "Whatever happens, we decide together." He squeezed her fingers once, hard. "Always." They stepped out into the night side by side. Inside, the trap waited. The gates slammed shut behind them. Metal shrieked against metal, the sound echoing across the abandoned estate like a warning bell rung too late. Floodlights snapped on all at once, bleaching the night into harsh white. Shadows fled. There was nowhere left to hide. Kira felt Dominic's hand tighten around hers one brief, grounding squeeze before he released her and stepped forward. "Stay behind me," he said. "No," she replied quietly, "beside you." He glanced at her, a flicker of something fierce and proud crossing his face. Then the first shot rang out. Glass exploded somewhere above them. A bullet ricocheted off stone, whining past Kira's ear. She ducked instinctively as Dominic moved fast, precise, dragging her behind the low wall of a fountain as gunfire erupted from the balconies. Chaos detonated. Shouts echoed through the estate. Men screamed orders. The air filled with smoke and the sharp, acrid smell of gunpowder. Dominic's men poured through the grounds in disciplined waves, returning fire with lethal accuracy. bodies fell, glass shattered, marble cracked. Kira pressed herself against the cold stone, heart hammering so violently it felt like it might break through her ribs. Fear surged, wild and blinding, but beneath it, clarity sharpened her focus. This was what Dominic lived in. This was the world he had built to keep her out. A scream cut through the noise, high, desperate. Her father? Kira was on her feet before Dominic could stop her. "Kira!" he shouted. She ran. The estate's main doors loomed ahead, flung open, light spilling out onto the blood-slick steps. She dodged past fallen glass, her dress tearing at the hem, lungs burning as she burst inside. The interior was a war zone. Furniture lay overturned. Paintings hung in tatters. Blood streaked the walls like violent punctuation marks. Somewhere deeper inside, a man sobbed. Kira followed the sound. She found them in the grand salon. Her father was bound to a chair at the center of the room, face bruised but defiant, eyes blazing when he saw her. "Kira!" he shouted. "Get out!" Viviana stood behind him, a gun pressed to his temple. She looked unhinged now, hair disheveled, mascara streaked down her cheeks, her red dress stained dark at the hem. But her eyes were alight with something manic, triumphant. "You came," Viviana breathed. "I knew you would." Kira raised her hands slowly. "Let him go." Viviana laughed, the sound cracking at the edges. "You don't get to make demands." Dominic stormed into the room then, gun raised, eyes locked on Viviana with lethal focus. "Step away from him," he commanded. Viviana's gaze snapped to him, her smile widening. "There you are, right on time." She pressed the gun harder against Kira's father's head. "Drop it." Dominic didn't hesitate, his weapon clattered to the floor. Kira's heart lurched. "Dominic." "It's fine," he said without looking at her. "I've got you." Viviana laughed again, tears spilling freely now. "Always the hero. You should have stayed gone." "You did this to yourself," Dominic said coldly. "I did this because you erased me," Viviana screamed. "Because you let me believe I mattered." Kira stepped closer, ignoring Dominic's warning look. "Viviana, listen to me. This doesn't end the way you think it will." Viviana's gaze flicked to her, sharp and resentful. "You don't get to talk to me like you understand." "I do," Kira said, "because I know what it feels like to be left behind." Viviana's breath hitched. "He promised me a future." Dominic's voice cut in. "I promised you safety." "You promised me hope." Viviana shot back. "You let me build my life around you." Her composure shattered then, words spilling out in a rush. "I waited. I defended you. I watched you disappear into your obsession with her while I stood right there." Kira felt the truth land heavy in her chest. "You were never going to choose me," Viviana whispered, "no matter what I did." Dominic's jaw clenched. "I told you where I stood." "You told me what I wanted to hear," Viviana cried. "And when she came back, I became nothing." Gunfire echoed somewhere down the hall, closer now. Dominic's men were pushing through. Viviana's grip tightened. "Everyone stops," she screamed, "or he dies." Kira stepped forward again, fearless now. "If you kill him, you lose everything." Viviana laughed hysterically. "I've already lost everything." Her finger trembled on the trigger. Time slowed. Kira saw it all at once, the way Viviana's pain had twisted into obsession, how love had curdled into something poisonous. She saw Dominic too, saw the cost of the choices he'd made, the trail of broken people left behind him. And she understood. "Viviana," Kira said softly. "Look at me." Against all logic, Viviana did. "You wanted to be seen," Kira continued. "You wanted to matter. But this isn't power. It's desperation." Viviana's eyes filled with tears. "He was mine." "No," Kira said gently, "he was never something you could own." The words broke something. Viviana screamed and shoved Kira's father away, swinging the gun wildly. Dominic moved. He crossed the room in 2 strides, catching Viviana's wrist, twisting hard. The gun fell. She stumbled back, crashing into the wall. Dominic slammed her against it, his forearm crushing her throat, his other hand closing around her neck. His eyes were black now, voids of pure violence. Enough, he snarled. Viviana clawed at his arm, gasping, her face mottled with fear. Do it, she choked. Kill me. Kira rushed forward. Dominic. He didn't hear her. Years of rage, betrayal, humiliation, and blood coiled tight in his body, begging for release. His grip tightened. Viviana's feet kicked weakly against the floor. Dominic! Kira shouted, grabbing his arm. Stop! He hesitated just a fraction, but it was enough. She stepped between them, pressing herself against his chest, forcing his gaze down to hers. This is where you choose, she said fiercely. Not her, not your past. You. His breath came ragged, his body vibrating with barely contained fury. She hurt you, he said. She threatened your family. And killing her won't undo that, Kira replied. It will only make you the thing you hate. Viviana sagged against the wall, sobbing now, broken. Dominic's hand remained at her throat. Seconds stretched. The room held its breath. The room was suspended in a fragile stillness. Dominic's hand was still at Viviana's throat. Her breath came in shallow, broken gasps, her eyes wild and unfocused. His body was coiled tight with violence, every muscle rigid, every instinct screaming for blood. This was the moment he had been shaped for, the moment where fear, rage, and power aligned into a single, irreversible act. Kira stood between them. Her hands pressed flat against Dominic's chest, right over his heart. She could feel it pounding fast, furious, alive. Not the heart of a monster, the heart of a man standing at the edge of himself. Dominic, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos ringing in her ears. Look at me. His eyes flickered downward, dark and blazing. She deserves it, he growled. She crossed a line. She crossed many, Kira agreed. And you've punished every one of them already. Viviana whimpered, her knees buckling. Dominic tightened his grip reflexively, rage flaring again. Kira didn't raise her voice. She didn't plead. She commanded. No. The single word cut through the room, sharper than gunfire. Dominic froze. No one had ever stopped him like this. Not with force. Not with fear. Not with authority. Kira wasn't threatening him. She wasn't challenging his power. She was standing inside it. She took my family, Dominic said, his voice shaking now, raw with fury and something dangerously close to pain. She put you in danger. Yes, Kira said softly, and she failed. Viviana's sobs echoed in the space between them. Look at her, Kira continued. She's already lost everything. Dominic's jaw clenched. His grip loosened slightly. She wanted to be seen, Kira said, to matter, and now she does, just not the way she imagined. Dominic swallowed hard. If you kill her, Kira said, you become exactly what she wanted you to be. The words struck deep. Dominic had lived his life proving he was untouchable. Proving that fear bent the world into obedience. Killing Viviana would be easy. Expected. Clean in its own brutal way. Mercy was not. Mercy was unpredictable. Mercy was dangerous. And mercy, he realized in that moment, belonged entirely to Kira. She doesn't deserve mercy, Dominic said. Kira met his gaze without flinching. Neither did the world give it to you. His breath hitched. For the first time since she'd known him, Dominic Perez hesitated. The room seemed to tilt, history bending around that single pause. Years of bloodshed, of ruthless decisions, of lines crossed without regret, all of it converged here, at Kira's feet. She could feel his internal war raging beneath her hands. Let her live, Kira said. Not for her, for you, for us. The word us landed softly and shattered something inside him. Dominic closed his eyes. Slowly, deliberately, he released Viviana. She collapsed to the floor in a sobbing heap, clutching her throat, gasping for air. Guards rushed forward instinctively, weapons raised, awaiting orders. Dominic lifted a hand. Enough, he said. The men froze. Viviana looked up at him through tears, disbelief etched across her face. You're not killing me. Dominic looked at her then, not with rage, not with desire, but with something far colder. You're alive, he said. He turned to his men. She leaves tonight. No money, no protection, no territory. She is never to return to this city. If she does, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Viviana trembled. Exile was a slow death in their world. A life without power, without protection, without identity. Kira knelt beside her, meeting her gaze. Go, she said quietly, and don't look back. Viviana stared at her for a long moment, hatred, grief, and awe tangled together, then she laughed weakly. You won, she whispered. Kira shook her head. No, I chose. Viviana was dragged to her feet and led away, her sobs fading down the corridor until they were swallowed by silence. The room felt different now. Lighter, heavier, changed. Dominic turned to Kira. For the first time since this nightmare began, his expression wasn't guarded or furious. It was naked. You stopped me, he said. Yes, Kira replied. No one has ever done that. She took his hands in hers, grounding him the way he had grounded her so many times before. You let me. His breath shuddered. I almost lost myself. But you didn't, she said. You chose differently. Dominic searched her face as if seeing her for the first time not as something to protect, not as something to claim, but as an equal force standing beside him. You are stronger than I am, he said quietly. Kira smiled faintly. I learned from you. Outside, the sounds of cleanup began, orders given, weapons lowered, the machinery of survival grinding back into motion. Kira's father was freed, shaken but alive. He clasped her hands, pride and relief warring in his eyes. But Dominic barely noticed. His world had narrowed to the woman standing in front of him. I built everything I am around you, he said. Every decision, every line crossed. And now? Kira asked. Now I need to know something, he replied. She waited. Dominic took a step closer, not imposing, not claiming, just present. I can protect you, he said. I can give you power, safety, loyalty. I can tear down anyone who threatens you. Kira's heart pounded. But I won't cage you, Dominic continued. Not anymore, not ever. He held her gaze, vulnerability etched into every line of his face. So this time, he said, his voice rough, I'm not taking, I'm asking. Kira's breath caught. Choose me, Dominic said. Not because of blood oaths, not because of fear. Choose me because you want to. The question hung between them, quiet, immense, irreversible. And Kira understood. This was the most dangerous moment of all, because love, freely chosen, was more powerful than blood. Morning came softly, as if afraid of what it might reveal. Pale light filtered through sheer curtains, touching the edges of the room without fully claiming it. Kira lay awake long before dawn, staring at the ceiling, her body still, her mind anything but. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it again. The gunfire. The blood on marble. Viviana's face twisted with pain and desperation. Dominic's hands at her throat. And then the moment that followed. The hesitation. That pause had unsettled her more than the violence ever could. Kira rose quietly from the bed and crossed to the window. Outside, the estate was waking slowly. Guards shifted posts. Cars rolled in and out. Life resumed, as it always did, built on the quiet assumption that survival meant moving forward without reflection. She pressed her palm to the glass. This is his world, she thought. And now it touches mine. She had seen Dominic kill. She had seen him nearly lose himself. She had seen how easily power slid into cruelty, and how hard it was to pull back from that edge. And still, when she thought of leaving, her chest ached. Footsteps sounded behind her. She didn't turn. I thought you might be here, Dominic said. His voice was softer than she was used to hearing it, careful, restrained. Not the voice of a man who commanded armies, but of someone standing on uncertain ground. You didn't sleep, she said. Neither did you. Silence settled between them. Kira finally turned. Dominic stood a few steps away, jacket discarded, shirt open at the collar, dark circles under his eyes. He looked older in the morning light. More human. I won't apologize for who I am, he said quietly. But I won't lie to you either. She nodded. Good. He took a breath. I don't know how to exist without violence. It's how I survived. How I protected what mattered. And now? She asked. And now, he said, I'm terrified it will cost me you. The honesty in his words disarmed her more than any show of power ever could. Kira folded her arms, grounding herself. Last night changed things. Yes, he agreed, for both of us. I saw what you're capable of, she said. The good and the terrible. Dominic didn't look away. I saw what you're capable of. She studied him carefully. You almost killed her. I wanted to, he admitted. Every instinct in me screamed to end it. But you didn't. No, he said, because you asked me not to. The weight of that settled heavily between them. I need you to understand something, Kira said. Loving you means living with the knowledge that this violence will always be part of your life. Yes. And choosing you means choosing that world. Yes. She swallowed. I don't know if I can ever be comfortable with it. I don't want you comfortable, Dominic said. I want you honest. She laughed softly, humorless. You don't ask for much. He stepped closer, but stopped before closing the distance. He wasn't claiming space anymore. He was offering it. I won't trap you, he said. I won't bind you with promises or threats. If you walk away, I won't follow. Kira's heart clenched. You're lying, she said gently. A corner of his mouth twitched. I won't follow today. She shook her head. You're learning. From the best, he replied. They stood there, two people stripped of illusion, facing the truth of what they were and what they could never be. I need to know who I am, Kira said finally. Not as your protection, not as your weakness, not as your reason for becoming a monster. Dominic's expression tightened. You were never the reason I became one. She met his gaze. But I was the reason you survived becoming it. His breath hitched. I don't want to lose myself, she continued. I don't want to become numb, or cruel, or complicit. You won't, he said immediately. You can't promise that. No, he admitted, but I can promise this, I will never ask you to be less than who you are. She searched his face for manipulation, for control. There was none. Only fear. That was new. I need time, she said. Dominic nodded once. Take it. She grabbed her coat and walked past him, her steps steady even as her chest felt like it was cracking open. At the door, she paused. Dominic. He turned. You asked me to choose you, she said. But I can't choose you if I don't choose myself first. He inclined his head. I'll be here. Kira stepped out into the sunlight. She walked the grounds for hours, past gardens she'd once admired, past stone paths worn smooth by decades of footsteps, past the walls that had always seemed so imposing and now felt merely solid. She thought about her childhood, about the girl who believed love could be simple, about the woman she had become, one who understood cost, consequence, and compromise. She thought about power and choice. When she returned, the estate was quieter. Dominic sat alone on the terrace, a glass untouched in front of him, his gaze distant. He looked up when he sensed her presence but didn't rise. Kira stopped a few steps away. I've decided what love means to me, she said. He held his breath. It doesn't mean blindness, she continued. It doesn't mean surrender, and it doesn't mean pretending the darkness isn't there. She stepped closer. It means seeing everything, she said softly, and choosing anyway. Dominic stood slowly, hope and fear warring in his eyes. Kira closed the distance between them. She didn't touch him. Not yet. I'm not staying because you're powerful, she said, or because you're dangerous, or because you were my first love. Then why? He asked quietly. Because you listened, she said. Because you stopped. Because when it mattered most, you let me change the ending. Her voice softened. And because I believe you can keep choosing that. Dominic exhaled shakily. And if one day I can't? Then I'll walk away, she said honestly. And you'll let me. He nodded. I will. Kira reached for his hand then, lacing her fingers through his. For now, she said, I'm choosing you. His grip tightened, not possessive, not claiming. Grateful. The future loomed uncertain, dangerous, real. And together, they stepped toward it. The decision didn't arrive with thunder. It came quietly, the way truths do when they no longer need to fight for space. Kira stood at the edge of the chapel garden, the old stone building rising before her weathered, solemn, unchanged. Morning light filtered through broken stained glass, scattering colors across the path like fragments of memory. This was where promises had once been whispered without understanding, where love had been sworn without knowing its cost. Dominic waited several steps behind her, not looming, not commanding, waiting. She turned to face him. I'm not doing this because anyone expects it, she said. I know, he replied. I'm not doing it because of blood or alliances or fear. His jaw tightened not in protest, but in relief. I know that too. She took a breath. I'm doing it because I want you, because I choose you. The words landed between them, heavy and luminous all at once. Dominic's control, so carefully maintained, fractured. He crossed the distance in 2 strides, stopping just short of touching her, as if still afraid to claim space that wasn't offered. Say it again, he said quietly. I choose you, Kira repeated, openly, without obligation. His eyes burned. Then let me choose you the same way. She nodded. There will be no announcement, Dominic continued. No spectacle, no politics. Good, she said. I don't want witnesses. I want truth. Then it happens today, he said. Now, before the world has time to interfere. Her pulse quickened, not with fear, but with certainty. Tomorrow forever, she murmured. He smiled, a rare, unguarded thing. Forever starts now. The preparations were simple by design. No guests. No banners. No press of power. The chapel was cleared, cleaned, its doors closed to everyone but a single officiant sworn to silence. White candles were placed along the aisle, their flames steady, patient. The air smelled of wax and old stone and something else, hope, perhaps. Kira stood in a small antechamber, smoothing her hands over a simple ivory dress. It wasn't extravagant. It wasn't symbolic of status. It was light. It was hers. She caught her reflection in the mirror and paused. This was not the girl who had waited. This was a woman choosing. A knock sounded at the door. Are you ready? Dominic asked from the other side. She smiled. Come in. He stepped inside and stopped short. For a moment, he forgot how to breathe. You look. He faltered, then laughed softly. There are no words. Kira tilted her head. Good. I don't want poetry. I want honesty. He crossed the room slowly, reverently, as if every step mattered. I've never been afraid like this, he said. She raised an eyebrow. You face death daily. Yes, he said. But this? She reached for his hands. Then kneel. He blinked. What? Not as a boss, she said gently, as a man. The request stunned him. Dominic Perez feared, obeyed, unstoppable, hesitated only a second before lowering himself to one knee in front of her. Not in dominance. In devotion. If you're choosing me, she said, voice steady, then choose me, knowing I will never belong to you. He lifted his gaze. I don't want ownership. Good, she replied, because I won't give it. I want partnership, he said. I want your voice beside mine, your hand stopping me when I go too far. She smiled softly. Then stand. He rose, eyes never leaving hers. And know this, she added. If I ever tell you to stop again. I will, he said without hesitation. The certainty in his voice sealed it. They stood there for a moment longer, foreheads touching, breathing each other in. No urgency. No fear. Just presence. The chapel doors stood open now. Candles flickered along the aisle. The officiant waited near the altar, silent and unobtrusive. Light streamed through the broken glass, painting the floor in fractured color imperfection made beautiful. Dominic offered his arm. Kira didn't take it. She laced her fingers through his instead. They walked forward together. No one spoke. No one needed to. At the altar, they turned to face each other. There were no vows prepared, no scripts, no rehearsed promises. Kira spoke first. "I don't promise easy," she said. "I promise truth." Dominic nodded. "I don't promise safety," he replied. "I promise choice." She took a breath. "I won't fix you. I won't try to own you. I won't stay if I lose myself. I won't stop you from leaving if you ever must." Their hands tightened. "But today," Kira said, voice soft and unwavering, "I stay." "And today," Dominic said, "I kneel only once here." The officiant cleared his throat gently. "If you are ready." Kira and Dominic looked at each other. Ready wasn't the right word. Willing was. "Proceed," Kira said. The doors behind them began to close. Slowly. Deliberately. The outside world faded noise, power, consequence, sealed away behind stone and choice. As the final sliver of light disappeared, Dominic squeezed her hand. "Whatever waits beyond these doors," he whispered, "we face it together." Kira smiled, heart steady. "Tomorrow forever," she replied. The doors shut. The chapel was silent when the doors closed. Not empty, expectant. Candlelight trembled along the stone walls, casting soft shadows where old scars in the masonry told stories of centuries past. The broken stained glass above filtered sunlight into muted hues of gold and crimson, painting the aisle in colors that felt less like decoration and more like memory. Kira stood at the altar, Dominic's hand warm in hers. This was where it had begun. Years ago, as children, they had stood in this same space with trembling hands and reckless certainty. A knife, a promise, blood mixed on cold stone, forever spoken without understanding what forever demanded. Now they stood here again, older, scarred, unafraid of the truth. The officiant's voice was calm, measured, words of union, of choice, of witness. But it was the silence between the words that mattered most. "Kira Lambert," the officiant said gently, "do you enter this union of your own free will?" "Yes," she answered without hesitation. Not because she was bound. Not because she was expected. Not because fear whispered consequences. Because she chose. "And Dominic Perez," the officiant continued, "do you enter this union freely, without coercion or claim of ownership?" Dominic's breath slowed. "Yes," he said, "freely." The word felt like a declaration, one that reached far beyond the walls of the chapel. The officiant nodded, then stepped back slightly. "You may speak your vows." Dominic turned to Kira. For the first time since she had known him, there was no armor in his eyes, no calculation, no dominance. Only truth. "I once believed love was a weakness," he said quietly, "something that could be used against me." Kira's fingers tightened around his. "So I became something untouchable," Dominic continued. "I learned to rule with fear, to protect through violence, to survive by taking." He swallowed. "And then you stood in front of me," he said, voice roughening, "and showed me a different kind of power." Kira's eyes burned, but she didn't look away. "I vow restraint," Dominic said. "Not because I am incapable of destruction, but because I choose not to wield it against the world when I can wield devotion instead." A hush fell over the chapel. "I vow partnership," he continued, "not possession. You walk beside me, not behind me. You stop me when I am wrong. You leave if I ever try to cage you." Kira exhaled shakily. "And I vow," Dominic finished, "that if blood must ever be spilled again, it will never be in your name." The words landed with finality. Kira lifted her chin, steadying herself. "When we were young," she said softly, "I believed love meant forever without question." Dominic smiled faintly. "We were reckless." "Yes," she agreed, "and innocent." She glanced down at the stone beneath their feet. "We sealed a promise here with blood because we didn't know any other language." She looked back up at him. "I don't want blood to bind me anymore," Kira said. "I want choice." Dominic nodded once. I vow to choose you, she continued. Every day, with open eyes, with truth, without illusion. Her voice strengthened. I vow to remain myself, she said, to never disappear into your shadow, to never become smaller so you can feel larger. A breath shuddered from Dominick's chest. And I vow, Kira finished, that I will stand beside you not as something to protect, but as someone who protects with you. The officiant stepped forward again, visibly moved. Then let us rewrite the oath. He produced a small ribbon, white, unmarked. No knives, he said gently, no blood. Kira and Dominick wrapped the ribbon around their joined hands, binding them together without harm. The symbolism was unmistakable. What once required pain now required only presence. By your words and your will, the officiant said, you are joined. The finality of it settled over them, not heavy, but complete. Dominick leaned his forehead against Kira's, his voice barely a whisper. You changed my fate. She smiled through tears. You let me. They kissed, then not fiercely, not possessively, but with a quiet reverence that felt like home. Outside, the world waited. Power still existed. Violence still lurked. Consequences had not vanished. But inside the chapel, something ancient had been rewritten. A monster had learned restraint. A woman had claimed her place. A love forged in darkness had chosen the light. As they turned to leave, hand in hand, the sunlight poured through the broken glass, no longer fractured, but whole in its imperfection. And for the first time, forever didn't feel like a promise made in fear. It felt like a future chosen freely.